This would be the second part of the adventure with the fishing. So not only did they do scuba diving, fishing, and snorkeling, we just stuck with these two features. The snorkeling really wasn't worth it. There's not enough marine life, and the water gets too murky. So you can see visibility is not super great. I mean, it is a totally neat experience nonetheless to be on the ocean floor in a completely different world. I mean, they've got all the equipment. If you are certified, you can go down by yourself. Here we had to go with the trainer. So we went one at a time, which was just fine because although I have done a little bit of scuba diving, I didn't have the confidence to go down and do this thing myself. At any rate, visibility is not real great. This is my second dive with David, and the first time it was far more interesting in that he would find starfish, blowfish, and other things. And I think that just in a different little area, maybe it's not as abundant. So this is off of the Nicoya Peninsula on the Pacific side, and this is what this area looks like. I'm sure there are other areas where far more fish live, but this is what it was like where we were. So nonetheless, I really had a thrill out of this experience. He was an excellent guide, and just going along and looking underneath the rock and finding some crustacean life or something. And now I will say that there was a point, because visibility is maybe 4 feet. If you go left and he goes right, and he keeps going and I keep going, you're going to separate, and I did. And at first I thought, well, let me just float around here a little bit longer. He's gonna, we'll run into each other. Like, how big is this space? But there are big old rocks, and it was a little bit not as easy to find. And so I just kept putzing around, and then after about 10-15 minutes I thought, gee, you know what happens if I run into trouble? So I headed back up, and you'll see me going back up at a certain point. But I'm just sort of filming the bottom. Again, we're not seeing a lot of activity, but I think it's just a thrill to be able to go under the water and see what that world is like. I don't know what that little worm was, but he seemed to be real fascinated by it. And later he finds a sponge of some sort. So there are a little bit of fish. I try to follow them. Also, what I found was interesting was there's a pretty darn strong current underneath the water here. You'll see it by all of this all material floating in the water, but you would think that everything down here is like super calm, but boy, there's still a current. I mean, maybe it's only going 5-7 miles an hour, but there's something happening there. I don't know, maybe it's a tide coming in or out, who knows, but again, I think that's part of exploring this other reality. So you can see it's pretty flat too. There are certain out places where you've got rock croppings, and then you've got a little bit more marine life happening in those areas. Didn't see any big fish, certainly no shark, but I also have to say that with camera in hand, I never really looked around, and I don't even think you'd see those guys until they were pretty darn close to you and it was too late. But I didn't think of sharks at all, and certainly the guides were not concerned about that type of danger, if you will. I will say this about, they kind of just run extremely quickly through the equipment. They don't really go through the equipment. They really just put it on you, and you don't touch anything, and they touch everything. But I will say that in my case, we got separated, and I'm out there in this environment by myself. So even though you're not supposed to touch anything, I had to learn how to fill up the air bladder so that I could rise myself up to the top, and also, because I had weights on, how to keep myself buoyant at the top of the water. So pay attention. Your life may depend on it, and things do happen. So good thing, even though you're not supposed to be down there by yourself, pay attention to as much of the equipment as possible. So this is when I kind of freaked out. I said, I'm going to go back up to the top, and I would say I was up there for maybe 5 minutes, and David, he showed up, and so we did a second dive. So this is us going back down, and he's just letting the weights carry him down. He does have a little valve. We have a little valve around our necks that puts air into a bladder that regulates your buoyancy. So you could put a little bit of air in it so that you're not you're just at that neutral level, if you will. Again, not a lot of marine life. Visibility maybe 4 feet. I would say distance, depth-wise, we're probably in the neighborhood of 24 feet, maybe 30 feet. The first time we followed the anchor, and I would say that it's about 24 feet down below. It is one of those things that if you've not done it, this is me, it is a thrill. I mean, it just is. There's something about getting exposure to a completely different environment that's not typical. It's kind of, certainly not going to the moon, but now he was real fascinated by this sponge, and he held on to this sucker forever. Now I didn't get into the details, but he grabbed some fish and it pierced him. I think it was one of those like a catfish type of prong that it had, and but he said it stung him, and I didn't know what it particularly was, but I mean, he's pretty aggressive with grabbing a rock, reaching his hand underneath rocks, and seeing what he can find. I wasn't quite as ambitious. I sort of, the second dive, I stayed pretty close to him. I didn't want to get separated because I don't think that's a good thing. You don't want to jump out of an airplane without unless you're tandem. So I don't think you want to scuba dive unless you are with a trained instructor the first time. So, but anyway, this is the floating around, just looking around. All the kids, Emerson didn't go. He had kind of a near infection the day before, so I think he really missed out. The other two guys, Isaac and Ivan, really had a thrill. I was surprised that Ivan was real excited. I mean, this is a real thrill for him, and he tends to be more easily spooked, but he was a real trooper for this. I mean, he loved it. I think he sort of appreciated the quiet. He made a comment about how quiet it is down there, and I think he liked the fact that this is a neat world, and what an opportunity to put on equipment and be able to breathe and be relaxed and comfortable in this world. And I think that was a big thrill for him. It was a thrill for me too, and I would definitely say on this is the Montezuma Crew. We booked it through the El Jardín, the hotel in Montezuma, and I again don't expect that every crew and every group of people that take you on these trips are the same. They're not. I mean, this is a private group. David and he's got an Italian partner. They own the boat, and this is what they do. So you almost have to get a feel for who your crew is to see if this is the group that you want to book with, because again, I don't think they're all the same, and they're definitely not. It's all going to be related to who the personalities are. Are they really there to use you as an ATM machine, or are they really there to give you the very best? And these guys, this Montezuma Crew, they sort of saw that each client of theirs would represent new advertisement, and that's really how they approached it. They approached it where we're going to let you have fun, and we'll do whatever you guys want to do. You've booked us for the day. You want to fish, we'll fish. If you want to scuba dive more, we'll scuba dive, and I like that. All right, thanks for watching.